Where will we go when the seas flood our sands? Hurricanes blow and our homes cannot stand. When will a drought drive us out of our lands? Far too soon, far too soon. Who will be claimed by infectious disease, buried by flames that have spread through the trees? Hearts will stop beating and lungs will not breathe. Far too soon, far too soon. As sure as the sunrise, we're running out of time. Time to save a world burning from our crimes. But as sure as the sunrise, we'll right a world gone wrong. Together, together we are strong. The temperature of our atmosphere has increased 1 degree Celsius since the birth of industry in 1760. We are already experiencing the disasters in my song and many others. And global warming is snowballing. It will be a great challenge to limit the rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We need to wage a war on global warming. Please welcome two warriors from Sunrise, Westford to Barry's Place. You'd like to introduce yourselves?
Yes. Hi, I'm Tobias Bluestein. I'm from Westford.
I'm Simon Wynn, and I'm from Littleton.
Okay. And what are your roles in Sunrise, Westford?
I'm the hub coordinator, so I help get everyone working on our next project, and I organize the next meetings.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a member of the hub.
Okay, and what is a hub?
Can you explain?
So Sunrise uses a decentralized structure, so we have a national team that works with hub coordinators across the country, and a hub is just a group of people that want to take action for the Sunrise movement, and they don't need to seek, they don't need to ask for confirmation before they do it, as long as it sticks to Sunrise's principles. And so hubs, we have over 200 hubs, I believe, across the country, and Sunrise Westford is one of them.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a way for people to get involved locally, since it's an American movement. They can, like, people can create hubs in towns that don't already have them.
Oh, good. And explain, what is the Sunrise movement?
It's an American youth-led political movement that is, its main goal is kind of to advocate for political action on climate change and to raise awareness.
And to create millions of good jobs in the process.
In clean energy industries.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's a Green New Deal, but yeah.
Well, currently, one of our main political goals is the Green New Deal, which is a commitment to combating climate change in the, as quickly as possible so that we still can have a future. According to the IPCC report in 2018...
An IPCC is what?
Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Okay.
So according to their report in 2018, we only had 12 years left to get to, or to significantly cut our carbon emissions to stop the worst effects of climate change so that it would hopefully stop at 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, even getting to net zero at 2030 only gives us a 66% chance of stopping that, of stopping it going past 1.5 degrees Celsius. And waiting until net zero at 2050 gives us, I think, 50% chance.
And what's net zero?
Net zero is when carbon emission levels are canceled out by the amounts of carbon dioxide being taken out of the atmosphere. And so the report based the 12 years estimate off of the amount of the carbon emission levels of the year. And so now we have a little less than 8.5 years because our carbon output has greatly increased and is projected to continue to, unless we stop that.
What's caused the increase?
Industrialization in general, like we're moving to a lot of companies are moving to cleaner energy, but there are companies like, for example, ExxonMobil that are the biggest contributors to carbon emissions in the atmosphere. So companies like those are contributing significantly.
Are they contributing more quickly than they were before?
They're definitely accelerating it by donating significant amounts of money to politicians, which essentially means that those politicians won't fight against the climate crisis, because to do that would be to go against the sources of their money. Mm-hmm. And Exxon has had an active campaign against science and about the climate for over 30 years. And so that increased efforts by them are helping to make that worse. And then we have a lot of consumerism. We're being told, like, oh, it's a new season, buy more clothes.
Yeah. And
people have many cars and are eating a lot of meat.
Mm-hmm. You opened up a few cans of worms here. Is the production of new clothes a contributing factor, as well as the fuel used to go to stores to buy them?
Yes.
Yes. It's a significant one, especially with our new throwaway fashion industry, where it's like you just bought clothes last year, but it's the new season this year, so you got to buy more. Mm-hmm. And the idea that you have to buy it new and you can't buy it used and you have to buy new things is certainly what helps to make the fashion industry significantly produce a lot of emissions.
Uh-huh. Emissions come with production?
Yes.
Okay. Emissions also come with things like shipping, packaging, all that?
Yeah.
What are the causes? What are the other causes of climate change, and what are the worst contributors to the carbon footprint that we're dealing with?
Well, carbon fuel emissions are a big contributor, but there's also other greenhouse gases like methane, water vapor, and nitrous oxide that contribute to the climate crisis. And
one of the biggest producers of methane is the agriculture industry, with mass production of cows and pigs and chickens and dairy, and like all of that causes a lot of emissions, because they're making cows just for the purpose of killing them so that people can eat them. And so there are just a lot of cows. If I believe the statistics are that if cows were their own country, they'd be the third largest producer of greenhouse gases.
Wow. And do you know how they produce the greenhouse gases? Is it the feeding of them, or?
It is their digestive system.
Oh, okay. I'm Mr. Diplomat, aren't I? Anyway. Is it too late for us to stop the worst causes of the climate not the worst causes. Is it too late to stop the worst repercussions of the climate crisis at this point?
It's not too late, but to see any effects, if we did today stop emitting greenhouse gases, we wouldn't see the effects of that for decades or even centuries. So if we want to see any significant changes for this generation and future generations, we need to act now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely not too late. The Green New Deal is a 10-year goal for getting us to net zero, where the carbon emissions are canceled out by levels removed from the atmosphere. And so for that to work, we have to start now. And that buys us more time to finish that plan. And even if we did stop now, we will still feel significant effects. There are already worse storms and hurricanes and people dying because of this. So, so even if we stopped it now, there would still be significant effects. And even if we stop it before 1.5 degrees Celsius, it's still going to be bad, but it's going to be a lot better than if we reach 2 degrees Celsius.
Uh-huh. Who is affected by climate change and who's affected most?
Well, everyone is affected by climate change, but predominantly poorer groups.
There are like climate hotspots where the effects of climate change are felt the most in really bad conditions that can be hot and dry weather or really murky weather, and these conditions cause the mass displacement of people who live in those towns and those regions. So those people are obviously greatly affected.
And then even in the US, predominantly minorities and lower income people, as well as the elderly and the young will be most affected. But yeah, as Simon said, it significantly affects a lot of regions and can cause things like famine, such as what's happening in Central America, which is actually causing a lot of climate refugees coming here because they don't have food because of emissions that we did.
Why are poor and minority more greatly affected than others?
Because they can't as easily afford the means to avoid the effects. They can't afford bigger, sturdier houses. They can't afford to buy food when the supplies are low.
Better insulation, they can't really leave.
Mm-hmm. What are the effects of climate change right now on everyone?
Well, as I mentioned, the famines in Central America causing high levels of climate refugees, and then increased hurricane strength and frequency, as well as months are getting hotter and hotter on average. Last July was the hottest month recorded in recorded history. And those are only a few of the current effects.
Sea levels rising also contributes to natural disasters like hurricanes.
And what are the repercussions in the future?
Well, if we don't act now, obviously sea levels rising will contribute to an increase in natural disasters. The Arctic Ocean is predicted to be ice-free in, I don't remember exactly when, but soon. And precipitation patterns will change in places, well, in general, precipitation patterns will change. And
1 million species will go extinct, most likely including the human race. According to a new study by the French climate group, sea levels are going to rise significantly, displacing over 1 billion people.
I think 4 feet, 1 to 4 feet or something like that.
Yeah. So there are going to be like 13% of the world is going to be climate refugees. Once those sea levels rise, I believe that's predicted to be by the end of the century.
What are the goals of Sunrise Westford? And what are the goals of the Sunrise movement in general?
Well, Sunrise Westford, currently our goals are a Green New Deal for Westford and surrounding towns like Littleton, so that when towns pass bills, it pressures state and federal governments to make the same commitments.
And on a larger scale, political action and raising awareness, and also since climate change is not just a political issue but also a racial issue, racial justice has become one of the goals of the Sunrise Movement.
Yeah. Climate justice is completely necessary for us to solve this crisis because of the communities that we mentioned earlier that are most predominantly affected. The Green New Deal references them as frontline and vulnerable communities, and they can't afford to escape the worst effects of the climate crisis. Even if we were to stop it now, they will still be hit hardest, and so we have to have climate justice so that we can save as many people as possible.
Can you tell me more about the Green New Deal, and can you tell me what kind of support we have for it?
Actually, we have quite significant support. We have over 100 members of Congress have co-sponsored it, including, well, obviously the introducers were Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the House of Representatives and Ed Markey in the Senate. And so there are many co-sponsors of it, including our federal representative, Lori Trahan.
And its main goals are to pressure the federal government to reduce or stop greenhouse gas emissions. And it also has a goal of guaranteeing high-paying jobs in the clean energy industry, which would help those who would be unemployed because of the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions.
Any other strategies that you can share that the Sunrise Movement has?
The Sunrise Movement has organized a lot of strikes and rallies, in other words, mass
Disobedient?
Mass disobedience.
Mass disruption.
Yeah, mass disruption, that's the word I'm looking for. And this is done to raise awareness, but also to put pressure on politicians because, for example, we somewhat recently had Flood the Seaport in Boston where the bridge was...
Sunrise and other environmental groups partnered with, attended an Extinction Rebellion event in Boston. Where
An Extinction Rebellion event is?
Extinction Rebellion is another climate organization. It's primarily based in Europe, but it has some strength in the U.S. as well. And so what we did there was we flooded the streets before so that the seawaters won't. So we flooded the streets and took over a bridge so that politicians would have to listen to us because they can't just continue along with the status quo.
Because cars couldn't go through the bridge.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. How do hubs communicate with each other?
But a lot of hubs will communicate with the larger hubs around them and be like, okay, so you're having an event, we'll get as many people as we can to come into that. Or Sunrise has partnered with U.S. Youth Climate Strikes to organize climate strikes around the country, along with the rest of the world. And so Sunrise Boston, which is one of the other hubs, has partnered with them to create a massive one in Boston, hopefully even bigger than the last one. And so we will be getting as many people to go into Boston as possible on December 6th.
How do you do that?
We take the commuter rail and then the red line.
I don't mean how you travel to Boston. How do you get people to participate?
Oh.
Especially those who aren't in the Sunrise movement already, which I assume is one of the things that you mean.
Well, word of mouth is a major thing, and we also made flyers, at least for our local events.
And then we also talked to the school administration, and for the last climate strike in Boston, they excused absences for anyone going to the strike, which allowed people to miss school without fear of getting in trouble for it.
You see any obstacles to the Green New Deal?
Yes. I know that there are a lot of Republican opposition, and I guess general opposition to the Green New Deal is due to worries of the cost. And then people argue that the cost of climate change obviously would outweigh the cost of however much the Green New Deal
Even by monetary values, the cost to not doing anything is significantly worse than the cost of spending some money and fixing it, because it's not a small amount of money to fix it, but we would lose a lot more by not.
What kind of costs are we talking about in terms of not fixing it?
Not fixing it? Trillions of dollars in property damages alone, and then trillions more in international trade loss and and disaster relief versus, it would probably cost trillions to do the Green New Deal, but trillions more to not.
Mm-hmm. What are the health costs of not doing it?
Well, death. Now, in the short term, because of air pollution, asthma rates have significantly increased, and that is significantly in majority Black, Indigenous, or people of color, or BIPOC communities because of redlining and how the government has set up the system to make it easier for corporations to put in polluting factories in majority Black neighborhoods versus majority white ones.
What is the strategy for working against the fossil fuel lobby?
So we have, Sunrise has a no fossil fuel money pledge, which we have gotten several candidates, or several politicians to agree to, and most of the Democratic candidates as well, although some of them are not sticking to it. But it just says that they're not going to take money from the fossil fuel corporations like Exxon, and that they're not going to be beholden to them, but they're going to actually be representatives of the people like they're supposed to be.
What can people do to stop advancing the global crisis as quickly as it's being advanced?
You can participate in local events such as rallies and go to strikes, because those help raise awareness and also pressure politicians. And there are some things you can do on the daily level, like reducing plastic.
And reducing meat and dairy consumption would also make a significant dent in your personal impact. But personal efforts, while good and definitely are something that need to happen, it's more important that we get climate legislation put in place. And so go to the strike, December 6th.
There's also usually ways to reach out to your local politicians, which you can do without leaving your house usually, so if that's preferable.
Like?
Like,
You can call them.
probably email works as well.
Or if you really want to, you can handwrite your letters.
Tell us about, you mentioned rallies. Tell us about your October 17th rally and how was it organized and how you got speakers.
So, you can talk on speakers, but we got a permit for the town common in Westford, and
we also made sure we partnered with Indivisible Westford and First Parish Church United of Westford, so that
which helped us to make it more accessible.
Yes.
And we got speakers and chairs and tables, and in terms of how we acquired speakers, we had some people from our own hub go up and give speeches, and
then I reached out to our other speakers by email and Facebook message. And so Lori Trahan sent a statement because she was in Washington doing some important voting. And then obviously we got Jim Arcero and a few others as well. So for the US, the next strike is December 6th. So everyone should go to that. December 6th, Copley Square, Boston.
And how do people get involved with the Sunrise Movement? What should they do?
Reach out to your local hubs, if any. Sunrise has a website that you can...
Which has a map, too.
Yes, and you can figure out where your nearest hub is. And if there isn't one, you can start one in your hometown, wherever you live. And what else?
What's it take to start one? Do you get help with it?
You do. You can get, so there's a hub support team from Sunrise National, and they can give you coaches. But if you're watching this, you probably live in Westford, and you should just join us.
Thanks.
Sorry, I forgot.
Please.
On the website, there are petitions and a sign-up form, so you can sign the petitions digitally and sign up to join Sunrise, so that you'll be put on the email list, and then you can be updated on the next big national events and plans. But then also you can join us by going to that site and emailing the email for Sunrise Westford.
Great. Well, Tobias, Simon, thank you. And thanks for joining us at Barry's Place. And I hope you will keep your cool and get involved. See you next time.